I am 38 and just married my boyfriend of 3 years, James, 44, 6 days ago. But, as fates would have it, her daughter ruined their wedding that was initially beautiful planned. The other daughter, 21-year-old Britta, is borderline psychotic, to put it mildly. Pre-wedding and ID have just called her stark raving mad. Post-wedding, well, the B** tack is officially psychotic. Nobody can just be that way and get away with it. There must have been something going wrong on between. James was married before to his college girlfriend. Britta came from that marriage. At the tender age of 9 years, Britta Klang's mother died in a car accident. After that, it was just down to her and James. He had a couple of girlfriends, but it never really stuck. He had some flings in the years after his wife passed away, but only one other serious relationship before me, and that lasted for just a year. Regardless, I had essentially been in the same position as him. The only difference was that it had not been my second wedding, and I didn't have any kids. I met James, and there was an instant connection. I knew for sure that I wanted this to be the man I ended up spending my whole life with after a few months. We've been together for a year, and we just moved in at this beginning of the month. In December, he proposed to me. James had made me in-track to Britta after 3 months of dating because he knew that I am the one. I had tried to be nice, but she was very gruff. James said to me when I asked him about it, "Oh, that was just her being usual obnoxious self, and she did that with all my girlfriends." He had hoped she would get past it, but not yet. When I confronted him about it, he just seemed really defeated, and from that day forward, I assumed that he had simply broken her out of the only way to get her dealt with. But he also could not literally kick her to the streets, as she did not have a job, and was in fact independent of him even at an age. If not him, her boyfriend. She had never gone to college, because she decided long ago, when she was still only a little girl, that all wanted to do in life one day get married and have kids. She did not feel having a degree would get her any closer to doing that, so she absolutely refused regardless of all the promises and threats made. When we met, she still lived with James. She moved out 2 months after I started dating him and went to live with her boyfriend Liam. From then on, we would see each other only intermittently. Though she would treat her dad like a king, when she visited us, it was all bitch face and cold shoulder with me, as if gracing someone who did not deserve to be around such wondrousness for 5 minutes of my time. I learned to ignore her too, since I was way past this high school nonsense, and she did not even have any issues with me that were affecting my relationship. I did not bother James about it either. 8 months ago, we got engaged, so of course that means we threw an engagement party. On that day, Britta also announced she was engaged to Liam, and had been planning a party of her own, but decided it would be much easier for them both if they just did their announcement at our engagement. She then made a point to come up and be smugly sorry for hijacking the party by celebrating us. She apologized for the fact, and simply wished that I wasn't too offended by it. No, I really did not give a shit, for real this time. This does not mean it was unaffected, or even in any way exploding friendly. You know what? I'm too old for this. I said, "Fine cost-cutting idea you had there to save a few quid and just break it gently at home." I congratulated her and exited because I didn't think she would have any answers. My assumption was correct, as when I congratulated her and acted unaffected by what she had done, the look back on her face. Not that I really cared, but at this point she had been irritating the shit out of me for 2 months straight. She'd ask James and me every time she came to Clear Lake about the wedding, what we were planning. If James ever told her about my decorations, or food, etc., she would point out amongst themselves some faults in it and act like it wasn't good enough. It was a bit irritating, but also too trivial to make an issue of, so I just let it go. Over the last couple of weeks, she had been bringing up my wedding compared to hers, which was going ahead for a few more months. I suppose she guessed that my response would be less than favorable, but I just swallowed it and kept congratulating. What she'd told me led me to believe that she was organizing a rather high-end wedding. Would not be a problem for Liam's wealthy family, who could afford it. She just kept boasting about everything being grand. She even went as far to say that she would love a party like this thrown for us, just so we could have an event where we were the small ones. I even had to quite literally talk her into just letting us be happy with what we got. Really, I liked the idea of celebrating with a small elopement in the first place. She was so annoying for the last few months, but I did not care, because all that mattered to me at this point in my life is being with James and getting married. For him, I belonged to the one human that he had allowed himself in my presence, and so, by default only, would I agree to suffer her. Yet, what she did on the day of her wedding was just insane. She went there right after I had walked down that aisle and everything, and while we were saying our vows, she was like, "Just checking. Anybody object to this wedding?" We both stood there gobsmacked. We had not prepared for that bit because, well, it was irrelevant and banned specifically from either of our own weddings. To be honest, we were lost for words and just stood there. She grabbed that moment and came right up to us, stating even if no one else had a beef with it, she did. She was loud, and she did not need a mic to speak up. She looked to the crowd and said I'd been playing her dad against her for our whole relationship, so now she was going to keep him from making any mistakes he would regret later on. I was too stunned to respond, but James bounced back and said she better leave or he'd call security to have her removed. She ignored him entirely. She blathered on as quickly as she could, saying how over the last couple of years, I had come to realize that they would never be good enough for her dad, and no matter what it took, short removing writing him out with a will cleaver in hand myself, I was going to take all his money away from her. You used James, and he was a lonely old widower, not to mention she was motherless, so it would be even easier for me because there wouldn't have been any opposition from her. She said that I was the most conniving and devious person she knew. Just as she reached the end of that sentence, a shot rang out, and finally all this time both Seamus, George yanked on him like he was frozen solid just looking at me, and Carter tight-lipped shock-headed prick for brains. Hilton came to his senses so far, everybody had been just flat stunned in their tracks, including us. But he succeeded in calling security on her and getting her kicked out. She did not slip without a fight. She went absolutely kicking and screaming, telling everyone that they had to stop this wedding because I was going to ruin James's life. She ended up saying she was disappointed in all of them not standing up for her and defending him from me. Of course, I felt incredibly dumb when she had to be removed. I honestly just started crying, real tears falling out of my face and wiping away all the makeup I had done an hour prior. Everyone rallied around me, though, and about half an hour later, we gave it another shot. Thankfully, we didn't run into any more problems this time, and were able to go ahead with our wedding. And then, in a true and honestly us fashion, we made up for whatever was just so wrong earlier by cranking the party vibes to full throttle. We had so much fun. Copyright Annie K. Lichtenstein. In fact, at the time of most people's departure, they hadn't brought up what Britta did, and we would have been happy for them not to either. We didn't mention her then for the rest of that day, as though we had an unwritten understanding that for one day, at least pretend it didn't happen, so let's have some fun. But it was not until the next morning we confronted this. I told James there was no way I would ever have Britta in my life again after what she did. He said he felt the same way as me, and that I was a damn good friend for even dealing with her thus far. He said he had known for a long time that Britta was not happy about the other women, but figured she would get over it. If she had not moved on, he never suspected she'd do something so fucking psycho. She was a child when he could forgive her for it, but now she was 21. There was no way he could make any more excuses for her. Therefore, he blocked her, and we had no interaction with her. She turned up on our doorstep, all her bags and such. 3 days ago, when James wouldn't open the door for her, she totally lost it. He reminded her that after what she had done with the wedding, he could not trust her anymore. He obviously didn't want her, and she had to go. Nowhere to go, she explained. Liam had dumped her rather unceremoniously a few days after the way too embarrassing wedding stunt. He believed she was insane, and really you can't fault him for that. They had been arguing about that, because he wanted her to say she was sorry for embarrassing him. We did not even realize that he had to immediately sneak off afterwards. When she declined, he sent her out of his house, and here we are with him wanting to take her back, asking us to let get live in our home. She had sought my help by demanding, "Say Britta really wants the best for her father." She apparently was waiting for me to admit I had always been mean to her. She was pretentiously humble, telling everyone she had only behaved that way at the wedding to defend her father against me because of my bad behavior in avoiding death. While she visibly overreacted to a certain extent, her reaction made perfect sense, and I didn't judge her or hold it against her in the moment. Perhaps doing so with me would leave Liam open to having her back. When she said that, James and I were stunned again because we really couldn't believe how she had just assumed we will do her a favor. A few seconds of silence, and then we said to her that she had to go, or we would call the cops. James wouldn't let her in, and there was no way I would say such a thing to help mend the broken relationship she had with Liam. I said, considering everything she has done, that it was a miracle we were even letting her stand there and argue with us. If James hadn't been with me, I would have called the cops on her when she showed up at my front door. James turned around and said, "I'm not helping her, she's your problem," because I had been the most embarrassed by what she did at that wedding. I therefore found a place next to the door and raised my voice as I spoke so that she would hear me properly. I just told her that not only had James been angry all afternoon, but she was about to have literally given him a heart attack with this behavior. I said to her, he was the sort of a many who should have had another kind of daughter than she. The fact she could no longer hide behind an agonizing mother-death sympathy card and blaming it for all her bad deeds till now. Living off her father's money, and yet didn't even feel guilty about his wedding to a woman he loved. Now she had no business in expecting anything from the two of us. I told her she had been accusing me of wanting all to myself the money that would have gone for some or another way in my father-in-law's estate, but then again, with a daughter not working, all forgot. I could take care of myself every bit as much. So, if she was going to blame anyone for taking everything they could of so much money that rightfully belonged instead to their relations, then look in her direction. I explained how first she'd been living off her father, and secondly, that in the future, Liam was going to have to pay for it. Oh, then she was a cheap gold digger, and not even smart about it. Thank God she was useful for once and found something to do, so the rest of us could go on with our lives in peace, because we were all a hell of a lot happier that way without her. I mean, I really lashed out that night, and 2 seconds later, all you could hear was loud crying. The window revealed she had fallen to the pavement and was completely distraught, sobbing with her face buried in it. James and I didn't say anything, but we were both feeling quite guilty. We helped her off of our door stoop, where she had been crying for 5 minutes, and then she walked away. We are soon very sorry for this. It is now my 3-day. It is not like you can stick to your guns and say, well, we know that she deserves out of our life, but, I don't even... After I saw her crack, it was a guilty reminder. So, am I an asshole for calling my stepdaughter a gold digger and telling her that we were happy without her? Update 1. So, over the past week since we got married, and until a couple days ago, where I still felt bad for saying, maybe, I thought to myself that perhaps my reaction was a little strong. We, naturally, were not going to say sorry, but we felt bad about it. Then again, neither of us really feel guilty at the moment. I already said in my initial post that after her wedding stunt, she got the boot from where she was living. So then she came up to us, but of course we said no. After that, well, we see where she ended up. And a couple of her relatives said they had no idea, so we were really lost by this point as to her whereabouts. Still, in the end we began to suspect that she may have just moved in with a buddy. We didn't even find out where she actually was until this evening, and it has RAF air traffic control seething. We blocked her, so she couldn't text us. However, James got a text message from one of his exes, I will elaborate on this later, with them sat together on the sofa, all smiles. That ex-girlfriend of his, an unlicensed lawyer whom he likely loathes more than others, because she was the only one who truly sought to dig into his pockets. They had dated for 7 months years before, and then he broke up with her when she kept asking to move in so that way she could not work if they got married. She went on to slander his name all over the place because, after he dumped her like yesterday's garbage. Britta nodded and mentioned the time the White Stripes played live, adding that she was a gold digger and knew how hard he had been hit by their split as they were friends of sorts, at best. However, in the end, she was more manipulative and devious than either. So for Britta to go out of her way and reach that ex-girlfriend was really low. One way or another, it was even worse to send James a picture of the two of them. A man who, upon seeing this setup in person, was literally minutes away from unblocking Britta for a talk about it, until I told him to bother her with that pointless BS. Only a lost cause would spend her time around that level of pain. So he could tell from his phone it was her, and wanted to know what she had sent. I think, after a bit of convincing haha, I told him that she only did this because one or another would react on the other end, so there is no need in playing into their hands. And so we just avoided it, and blocked that number too. James is still a bit worked up, and I am trying to calm him down. Update 2. So the other day, we discovered Britta was living with one of James's ex-girlfriend, and then we blocked her, and she had no way to communicate with us. The doorbell rang this morning. She came with the lawyer just when we were having breakfast. I was very confused as to why they were there, so I rang up James and asked what the fuck this all about. He claimed he wants to open the door, speak with them, and move on from this for good. So we did. We let them in, and they sat down, so we asked why they had come. Then Britta finally said she was there to talk about how I had caused her so much emotional distress, all the way back in our wedding, and then we shut up her house with Liam. She made a really big mistake telling me that, and I was instantly angry, but trying not to be. I said, "Well, what are you doing here telling me if you are going to file a lawsuit?" That didn't quite track. She visited me just to say that, and for the opportunity to withdraw what I had said about her getting on with James, apologies if she wanted to, and make sure he would let back in. Tech eventually got a lawyer representing her now. Poor scorned ex-girlfriend can't keep away from James. While announcing it, both she and the other girl were clearly thinking they just surprised us with something horrifying, as I am assuming my face looked a little like this. All I said was that ready to fight them. They never figured to see that by coming. They were most likely expecting me to be super afraid and just surrender. But I'm not an idiot. I am aware that this absurd case could never be won, even if they did manage to get a halfway reasonable judge to listen in the first place. I said if they want to go to court, then let's do this. I still remember the look on their faces. It was exquisite. Actually, if this were to go into court, Britta said that I would be screwed, so she was really giving me a moment of silence to think and get back to her. But I had a day or two at my disposal, if I so chose. There was no rush for me to decide anything right away. I even said that I had already decided. They did not need any more time. File the lawsuit. We both just sat there quietly watching them, because I could see the two of them were getting absolutely furious at us behaving this way. Finally, Britta stormed over to us, and literally stomping both her feet while yelling at us. She insisted to James that she had always assumed I just must be like a total psycho person trying to take her away from Daddy, but that she never, ever anticipated him falling for all of it, and in turn dropping the axe on his own daughter. At that, James snapped, and informed her he had given her ample opportunities to mature from a child into an adult over the last few years. But as she refused to do so continuously, was just being fucking spoiled brat. He had been a consistent financial and emotional support for her ever since she got out of school, but she was now all grown. It was not as if she had any good reason to be behaving the way that she was. He was tired of this, sick, and apologizing for her. He was just now starting to be happy with me, and he did not want her messing that up for us. Then told her that when I had said we were way happier without you, he claimed, "This is actually true, and even though it hurt to say out loud, she didn't turn into the person your mother would have wanted." He also felt guilty for it, always giving in to her demands. However, he had also tried to correct her ways and improve herself. However, she never paid attention to him. She'd been taking him for granted all along, and it was over. Just then, even now, she had taken him for granted, and that was completely out of doubt cause at the end of it all. One his worst exes whom he used detestably. She'd known it would be a real kick in the teeth for him, and piss him off as well. That was why she did it. This means we have no obligation, however you did more to shatter us. Give yourselves the power to cut yourself and run away. Then his ex-girlfriend started to try talking, and I shut her up real quick because she was not even family, and been an EX for a while, which means your opinion is invalid. Sorry. Then when I told her to shut up, they both turned on me and tried to insult or hurt my feelings. So that's when James pulled Britta by the wrist, fucked her to the door, and forcefully pushed her outside. He threw her ass out, and said he wouldn't have it no other way, until she was really sorry. His ex-girlfriend came in after him, but I caught a glimpse through the glass of Britta crying outside. So it was a tense morning, and the rest of our day we were all just trying to recover from the drama that occurred. We both ended up leaving work early as we found it impossible to concentrate. The two of us are watching movies and doing a takeout to try and avoid thinking about what went down in the morning. Update 3. Howdy, guys. It has been 3 days since I updated about Britta and James' ex-GF coming to my house threatening me with a lawsuit. Well, we didn't exactly hear anything from either of them, so we figured it was done anyway. But evidently, we were mistaken, because this morning James got a call from yet another number, and it came out to be his ex-girlfriend also. On the phone, she was clearly living separately from Britta, he told him. She had kicked his daughter out of our place the other day, and was now asking him to also pay her back for all that she spent on his kid, after all her actions. And of course, she was asking for something absurd too. She said she wanted $3,500 for letting Britta stay with her the past few days, and also to keep quiet about what I know. James flipped, and told her that he wasn't giving her anything. She couldn't just blackmail him like this. He told her that she kidnapped Britta on its own, and he had made no promises to it, so it did not owe him anything. This though she felt like, what did he had to lose, and then started threatening him, that if you do not pay up, I am going to upload this online for everybody knows. She only let Britta come live with her, apparently, because Britta made it seem like James was willing to have her around again. That were I the holdup. That if it was James once down, she would make sure to have told his ex that he should be able at least get this much out of them, because surely he would say no. But we knew that had been debunked, and in her eyes, she'd paid for a product and now demanded it by hook or crook. It was what they promised. She would have to speak with James directly if Britta could not finagle it for her. And when James and I yelled at her some, James handed me the phone, and she said if he ever answered his cell phones again, we promised to call police immediately. She even tried to backchat me, but I told her that she is a failed lawyer, surely broke too. It was the only thing I could come up with for her to be this desperate, and why would she make things worse on herself? Because at that point, no one would give a fuck if she said bad things about James, as she had been doing so much already. I had the power to expose her, but then she would lose any clients that she did have, and immediately shut up, and then cursed me out, saying even more, and finally hung up. After we did that, the first thing I thought was, where should Britta be? We are respecting Siri's privacy, so we did not ring her. For all that she has done to us, we cannot and should not be the ones nursing her back to health. Well, lady, she is an adult. Let her figure that out for herself. All she ever needed to do was apologize profusely from the core of her being, because if not for Chick dropping a Dunkin' Donuts crapping all over my wedding and then flipping on us every which way known to man. But she cannot even muster a half-assed apology, much less whole one. Which is a real shame because from what I do know, James did try to be there for her and be the foundation that would raise her into being a good person. And yet, somehow some people simply do not give a damn. So, I prayed she was okay, but also that she did not return to my life. I know at least we do. Update 4. Hey, so it's been over a month since the wedding, and we are now currently on our honeymoon. James is with me, of course. Britta, we had not heard anything from her in the last weeks, and we were even quite concerned about. But we managed to relegate that thought into the darkest, dustiest corner of our reality queues and tell ourselves that she was at least somewhere safe. Either way, we are not calling her back, as that will only give off the impression she can get away with anything and everything. So we tried to keep to ourselves, and a few days before our honeymoon, she sent us an email apologizing for everything. She informed us that she and Liam had worked things out, because she was apologetic to him, but made a promise to apologize to us too. It was mostly directed towards me, telling that she had been so mean to me and finally realized it. In fact, she had to sleep on park benches the first couple of nights, and for some reason that tugged at my heart a little, but I shook it off. Well, yeah, but fuck. She missed the shit out of her dad, because being by herself made even more clear how amazing she had it with him, and that everything was 100% in perspective now, how seriously fucked up she acted. Apparently she was going to get help, and actually try to be better. Liam and her were no longer engaged, but they remained a couple as he was able to at least be there for her. Not sure if it's a good idea or not, but his choice. Well, at least James and I are glad that she has someone to rely on in an emergency, even if it's no us. Even nothing to do with me, they seemed like pretty good together, her and Liam. Anyway, we replied to that email and said sorry is accepted, but no contact from now, until well, whenever, 'cause we need time to cope with this shit. She will be respecting that. So that's how it is now. Regardless, I want to put that all behind me and enjoy the